Welcome to Travel with Sean. I'm Sean, and in this episode, we're in Évora, Portugal, which is an UNESCO World Heritage Site because of the Roman ruins that we're going to see, and the fact that it was occupied by the Celts even before the Romans were here. A lot to see. Let's get started. These are the city walls of the ancient city of Évora, Portugal. The city is located about 86 miles east of Lisbon, the capital city of Portugal. Évora is an UNESCO World Heritage Site because of its well-preserved town center, medieval walls, historic buildings from several periods, and their Roman ruins. Celts lived here for a couple hundred years before the Romans conquered this territory about 2,000 years ago. The Celts were the ones who named the city. In the 6th century, the Romans were conquered by the Visigoths, a Germanic people who expanded their kingdom across southern Europe and into Spain and Portugal. The Visigoths lost Évora and all of Portugal to the Moors, North African Muslims, in the 8th century. The Portuguese conquered the city in the 14th century, and there is evidence that people lived here from about 6000 BC to about 4000 BC. After about a half-mile walk in from the city walls, we come to Geraldo Square. This is the heart and downtown of the city. Geraldo Square is where they used to have their public executions. During the Inquisition of the early 1500s, people who were found guilty of heresy were brought here to be burned at the stake. At the end of the square is the Évora Cathedral. This is the largest medieval cathedral in all of Portugal. It was built from the late 13th century into the early 14th century. Now we are at a Igreja da Misericórdia, or the Church of Mercy. The church was built in the mid-16th century, and its only exterior decoration is the Royal Arms of Portugal. The interior was completely remodeled in the early 18th century to include its beautiful gilded altarpiece. The hand-painted blue tiles are from the 17th century and depict scenes from Bible stories. The blue tiles, called azulejos, are among the most famous aspects of medieval churches in Portugal. This church has one of the largest collections of azulejos in all of Portugal. You can see that nearly every part of the walls not covered with paintings is covered with panels of blue tiles. A Igreja de São João Evangelista, or in English, the Church of St. John the Evangelist, was founded in 1485 by the Count of Olivença. He and his wife are both buried in front of the altar. As is the case with many medieval churches in Portugal, the walls are lined with hand-painted blue tiles. Those in this church were made as early as 1711. The pewbox for the Count and his family to sit during Mass can be seen on the right. And on the left is the pulpit, from where the priest would give his homily. An interesting feature of this church is that it was built over the graves of the Count's ancestors, and their bones can be viewed through a grating in the floor among the pews. How would you feel about seeing this every time you went to church? You look in the floor and you see bones. Convento de San Francisco, or in English, the St. Francis Convent, was the first Franciscan monastery in Portugal, built in the early 1500s. Inside the monastery, you can find a Capella dos Ossos, or in English, the Chapel of Bones. It was built at the end of the 16th century by the Franciscan monks who lived here to reflect on the fragile condition of human life and to meditate on eternal life. The walls and pillars are lined with the 5,000 skulls and thousands of bones that were dug up from the city's cemeteries. There is also a poem on the wall from the mid 1840s about the value of reflecting on one's life. The last stanza reads, "If by chance you glance at this place, stop for the sake of your journey, for the longer you pause, the further on your journey you will be." All that is known of this dried corpse is that it's been hanging around the chapel for centuries, literally by chains. In the last several years, it has been protected in this glass case. This arch is the best preserved part of Évora from the Roman era. The Temple of Diana was built about 2,000 years ago in honor of the Roman Emperor Caesar Augustus, who was worshipped as a god and died in the year 14. It was largely destroyed by invading Germanic tribes, the Visigoths, in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Although it is called the Temple of Diana, there is no evidence that it was ever used for worship of that goddess. The name comes from a legend started by a priest in the 17th century. From the 13th century into the 19th century, it was used as a butcher shop. The ruins of a Roman fortress or a Roman palace, sitting at the edge of the old part of the city. Peacocks, wild peacocks, sometimes come to perch here and watch the people. When they do, people gather to photograph those peacocks. As you can see the peacock sitting on the arch on the left side. Look for the green plumage. Here you can see modern Évora. It was built around the ancient part of the city after it outgrew its walls. Thanks for watching. If you like what you saw, give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe down below. Then you can be alerted to future episodes of Travel with Sean. Thanks again.